Scripts feel safe. They give people something to cling to when pressure shows up. Especially in sales conversations, leadership meetings, and high stakes decisions, scripts, they promise certainty. Say this line, now say this one. If they object, flip to the next page and respond with this sentence. And yet, if scripts actually work the way people claim, nobody would freeze in the moment. But they do, all the time. I've coached thousands of professionals across various sales industries, including real estate and leadership. These people, they know their numbers, they know their market, and they know exactly what they're doing. And still, the moment a conversation really matters, most scripts fall apart. Not because these people are bad at sales, it's because pressure breaks recall. Scripts require memory, and pressure shuts down memory. When the outcome matters, your nervous system takes over. Your brain speeds up, you start talking faster, and you fill the silence with gabbing. You explain things that don't need explaining, and you try to sound confident instead of just being clear. And the conversation, it quietly shifts. Instead of collaboration, it becomes performance. This is why questions outperform scripts every single time. Because questions slow the conversations down. Questions move the thinking off of you and onto the other person. Questions give you control without force. Here's something most people never learn. When you're talking, the other person is deciding how they feel. When they're talking, they're thinking. That distinction matters more than any clever line you could ever memorize. Control in conversations doesn't come from answers. It comes from guiding thinking. That's why the right questions close faster than scripts ever will, but only if they're asked clearly. So let's break down the 3 questions that consistently outperform scripts when the stakes are high. The first question is this: what's most important to you about this decision? This question immediately reframes the conversation. It pulls the conversation away from features and pricing and timelines and tactics and moves it into priorities. It forces the other person to pause and reflect instead of defend. And that pause matters. It means you've shifted them out of reaction and into thinking. And here's what that might look like in real life. A buyer says, "We're just looking right now." The scripted response is usually one of urgency. It's market stats, it's scarcity, it's FOMO, fear of missing out. The stronger response is calm curiosity. What's most important about you as you're looking? Now the buyer starts talking about certainty and timing and lifestyle and family and risk tolerance. You've moved from resistance to insight in one sentence. The second question, what concerns do you have? Not objections, concerns. That word matters because objections feel adversarial. Concerns are human. And when you invite concerns, people stop posturing and start being honest. Here's what that might sound like. Someone says, "We're just not sure about the price." Now, most people will immediately justify, explain comps, prove value. They'll talk more. The calmer, more authoritative response is to slow it down. What specifically concerns you about this? Now you're dealing with reality instead of guessing. Sometimes the concern isn't price at all. It's timing or fear of regret or a past bad experience. And you don't find that out by explaining. You find that out by asking. The third question, what happens if nothing changes? I mean, this is where clarity shows up without pressure. You're not threatening. You're not manufacturing urgency. You're inviting reflection. This question is powerful because it removes you from the role of persuader and puts you in the role of guide. Here's an example. A client says, "We might just wait until later this spring." The instinct is to argue. The better move is calm. What happens if nothing changes between now and then? Now they're thinking through the consequences on their own terms, and people trust their own conclusions far more than your explanations. And that's the key. None of these questions convince, they invite. Scripts try to control through words. Questions create control through clarity. And here's where most people mess this up. They ask a great question and then they panic. They fill the silence. They explain why they asked it, or they rephrase it, or they soften it. And in doing that, they steal the moment. If you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, why did I say that? This is why. The fix is simple but uncomfortable. Ask the question and then zip it. Stop talking. Let the silence do the work. Silence isn't awkward when it's intentional. Silence is actually respectful. The person asking the questions controls the conversation, and they do it in a calm manner. That's not manipulation. That's leadership. Here's what separates amateurs from professionals with real conversational authority. Professionals don't ask questions to get answers. They ask questions to create clarity. They understand that the quality of a decision is directly tied to the quality of thinking that led to it. And thinking doesn't happen when someone feels rushed or judged or sold. This shows up in leadership conversations all the time. A team member says, I'm so overwhelmed. The instinct is to fix it, to offer solutions, to give advice. The stronger move is a question. What part feels heaviest right now to you? That question narrows the problem and signals care without taking control away. In sales conversations, the same principle applies. A client says, I need to talk to my spouse. The reflex is to push for a commitment. A calmer, more influential response is curiosity. What does your spouse usually want to be clear on before making a decision? Now you're preparing for alignment instead of resistance. This is why questions scale influence. They don't depend on mood, they don't depend on perfect timing, and they don't depend on remembering a script under pressure. They depend on presence, and presence is a skill that you can practice. The more you slow conversations down, the more control you actually have. That's the paradox most people miss. So here's some practice that you could do this week. Notice where you're tempted to start explaining and instead pause. Replace one explanation with one better question, then stop talking. That's how conversations move forward. And that's how trust is built. And that's how deals actually close.